And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Sunday, May 25th. I am Josh Engelman. That is Greg Ehrenberg, and we are here for Game 3, Eastern Conference Finals, Pacers and Knicks. And we might actually have some changes to talk about, and we do. I just spoke it into existence. The New York Knicks will start Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, and Robinson today. We're going to get into it right now. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. We got the lineup change. Wasn't working for the Knicks. Didn't think Tibbs had it in him. What you thinking about the lineup change, Greg?
So you and I were talking before. This was the assumed starting lineup. I kind of wish it would have come out later just because of the fact that this was something that was sort of public information, like not officially, but there's been rumors circulating. So I have bets on Hart unders. I have bets on Robinson overs from yesterday because I thought this was what the starting lineup was going to be. I kind of wish it would have just come out in the same time all the other Knicks starting lineups came out, like 4 minutes before the game started, just because there would have been a little bit of an advantage there. Although it would have been super annoying, like you and I were talking about. I had a little bit of trepidation just because Tibbs is Tibbs. They were going to hear all these rumors for 2 days that Mitchell Robinson would start over Josh Hart. He would do the same deal where we don't get the starting lineup until 4 minutes before the game, and then it would be an unchanged starting lineup. So I was a little bit nervous about that scenario, but at the same time, too, this was the expected starting lineup, and it would have been nicer if people had a little bit less time to react.
I feel like EMac nailed it here. Mitchell Robinson will play 2 minutes, get 2 fouls, and then end up playing less tonight than normal. Yeah. Then Josh Hart plays 44 off the bench. I mean, by all accounts, for the data we've seen so far in this series, the starting lineup has not been working. And it has been much better with Mitchell Robinson on the floor. Do you think this is a positive change for the Knicks, negative change for the Knicks, or it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things because these guys are all just going to play huge minutes one way or the other?
It's so hard to say. They haven't started this lineup the entire season. Obviously, these guys have played together. One thing that is pretty noticeable is that Mitchell Robinson is in considerably better shape now physically than he was a month ago, where he looked pretty fat for a lot of the season. Yeah. And that's not the case anymore. He's slimmed down. He's looked pretty good physically. I guess the biggest impact of this, which once again is not positive or negative, I have to assume the game is played at a slightly slower pace now, though.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, Josh Hart is like an agent of chaos out there. Running 2 bigs isn't going to make you faster. Brunson's already slow. Yeah, you would think this would be a little bit slower, which is, I mean, it's probably a wash in the grand scheme of things, the pace change. Like, what do we got? A Pacers minus 1.5. I mean, I guess technically that's, today better for the Knicks, but like in the grand scheme of things, better for the Pacers. But I don't know. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to matter for the game all that much, but it is going to have a pretty big impact in DFS because that is going to change the way that Josh Hart gets projected. That's going to change the way that Mitchell Robinson's getting projected, but that does not change the way their salaries were set for today. Mitchell Robinson is 4,200 on DraftKings. On our last run, he was the 4th most owned guy, while Josh Hart is sitting at a crisp 8,600, 18% owned, 2% in the captain. Is Josh Hart now more interesting as a DFS play?
No, just because of projections still mattering. And it's not like he's pulling 0 ownership or anything like that. You know, he's still projected for nearly 20% ownership. And he's $8,600 in the flex. And, you know, I was seeing people online saying, well, this isn't really going to change Josh Hart's minutes. They just want it. It has to. In games that are competitive where he hasn't gotten in foul trouble, fouls have been an issue for Josh Hart in these playoffs, by the way. But in games where he hasn't gotten in foul trouble and the games have been competitive, he plays over 40 minutes. It's nearly impossible to play over 40 minutes when you come off the bench. So this is going to be a ding to Josh Hart unless we get the EMac situation they brought up before, which is Mitchell Robinson picks up 2 quick fouls and heads to the bench. But it's just from a projection standpoint, it's going to be really hard to justify Josh Hart in any kind of meaningful way.
Yeah, it really does feel like that's where we're at. I'm curious to see if anything changes for him as we update anything, but in the grand scheme of things, I think we already had this projected the way that
Yeah.
we have it right now. I'm intrigued by him because that is quite the pay up to be contrarian price tag. Don't know how much I'm going to get. We'll see as I start to run this a little bit. Still waiting on the Pacers lineup, I guess, but that one would really shock me if it changed. So I guess let's lead it into the top end here. 11-2 for Brunson, 10-6 for Halliburton, 10-2 for Towns. Then everybody else is going to be 8,600 or less, with Hart being the 8,600. Captain ownership is very balanced. The second highest owned captain actually is $8,400 Pascal Siakam, who went crazy in game 2. What do you like at the top end?
Yeah. It is pretty funny because there's nothing different about Pascal Siakam prior to this game as it was prior to last game. He just played really well last game. So now people are like, oh my God, we have to play Pascal Siakam because he went nuts last game. Just kind of the way these playoffs have gone. But on the high end for me, I'm leaning the most towards Halliburton at the moment. So Halliburton, a couple things going for him. First, he is cheaper than Jalen Brunson. And then also you're getting a little bit of an ownership reprieve in the captain spot where Halliburton is 14% owned, whereas Jalen Brunson is 18.5% owned. I don't really view their ceilings as being all that much different. I think the floor is probably a little bit higher on Brunson just because I think he's probably going to play more minutes. And then he's also going to carry a higher usage rate than Tyrese Halliburton. We were talking about this the other day. There are days where Tyrese Halliburton just isn't a high usage guy, where he's kind of more lax. He kind of takes a backseat. We saw that last game to some extent where he took a backseat to Pascal Siakam for good reason. Siakam was playing out of his mind. Like there wasn't a real compelling reason that Halliburton needed to take shots away from Pascal Siakam in that game. But for today, with the field not necessarily getting off of Halliburton, but Siakam's more popular in the captain spot. Brunson's more popular in the captain spot. So I'll lean a little bit towards Halliburton over those guys, differentiate my set of lineups a little bit.
I'm getting ready to start running some stuff once we we got the Pacers lineup 2 minutes ago. Not important. It's the same one as it was always going to be. So whenever we push, if we push, I'll start a run there. As I look at the data, my expectation is that I'm going to have quite a bit more Halliburton. I assume I'm going to be a bit lighter on Pascal Siakam. The guy that I'm most interested in here is Towns, because he now projects differently if Mitchell Robinson is going to be on the floor with him more. And I have to assume that he's going to be on the floor with him more. But we know what this does to Towns's impact on a basketball game. While we haven't really seen it, and we could pull the data from this season, but it's going to be a little bit light. But we know what it looked like last year alongside Rudy Gobert. I think we can be pretty comfortable in hot swapping Rudy Gobert and Mitchell Robinson in terms of what you're playing alongside of offensively. This will greatly reduce Karl Anthony Towns' rebound opportunities. In theory, this should increase his offensive upside a little bit, would be my guess, but it's also going to take him likely away from the rim for easier opportunities. He's going to find it a little bit tougher to find space when trying to get to the rim, I would imagine. Do you think this is better for Towns or worse for Towns?
Worse. Just because of the rebounding situation. And then it is a little bit hard to compare this as an apples to apples comparison because the Minnesota team last year kind of only had two guys who were capable of scoring the basketball, and Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. And you got a guy in Brunson who it's not the exact same, but he's close to comparable to a usage rate that Anthony Edwards is. But then the other pieces the Knicks have that are going to be playing alongside him, like OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, they're more capable of offensive players than some of the other guys who you saw Cat play with in Minnesota. And I do think that Gobert and Mitchell Robinson on offense pretty interchangeable in terms of what their roles are. Maybe a little bit more offense on the Rudy Gobert side, but it's not like he's got some massive package of moves that he could go to on the offensive end. It's kind of, if he's holding the ball and his arms are up in the air, he could drop it in the basket. That's the extent of his offensive game, other than that one fadeaway that he hit in Game 7 against Denver last year. So I have to think that his situation this year is a little bit worse from a usage standpoint than it was last year. And then we know that it hurts his rebound rate a pretty significant amount.
Do you think he's over-owned because of that? 'Cause right now he's the third most owned guy overall, the fourth most owned captain. Is that too high for Karl Anthony Towns right now?
So I am currently right around in line with the field. I'm actually pulling up because I hadn't thought about this before. Interesting. So books have actually pulled. This kind of goes to show, people always believe like books know everything. They've
Yep.
pulled Karl Anthony Towns props off the board. I was going to check what his rebound one was, but FanDuel has taken them off the board for now. And they also just moved Mitchell Robinson's props up and moved Josh Hart's down. So it goes to show that they were not necessarily projecting this to be the Knicks starting lineup for today. But as far as Cat goes, I'm currently right around in line with the field. I do think it hurts him. I'm going to lower his ownership a little bit. I guess as I'm just kind of thinking through this and thinking out loud, maybe this makes his minutes a little more secure though, because what we've seen at other points in this year, like last game, for instance, Tibbs leaned a little bit more towards Robinson in the fourth quarter until the Knicks got down. I thought he rode Robinson a little bit too long in that game before he went back to Towns, especially when the Knicks needed offense. So maybe there's a more secure minutes for Cat. You don't run into the same possible issues of his minutes getting limited in the fourth quarter if they're willing to start both of them on the same court together. But ultimately, yes, I think this is a negative for him, and I want to be slightly underweight to the field.
Okay. We're on the same page there for Towns. Very intrigued by what this is going to look like and how much. I mean, in theory, he should probably be in less foul trouble because Mitchell Robinson will be the last line of defense more often at the rim, or at least you would expect him to be. So could be an ancillary benefit for Towns. This change removes his ability to foul as much. I could be making that up. He could foul more on the perimeter, and I have no idea. I'm just assuming he doesn't. But this dynamic between him and Robinson and Hart today and where their prices lie, I think makes this the first kind of interesting showdown slate we've had in a bit, because we've finally been able to like mix it up a little bit. And we haven't had that for a while. If they didn't make this change, this would have been a really unfun game to talk about DFS wise, other than the fact that it's just now in Indiana.
Yeah, we would have just been talking about that we're playing all of the same guys at the same exposures and the same price points as we did in games 1 and 2, because nothing else has really changed. But I will say this as it relates to the slate. Mitchell Robinson, to me, pretty clearly the top overall best play on the slate. I have him in so many lineups right now. And I think we'll see when ownership updates, because I assume that'll be
updated.
Oh, it is it? Okay, so I'll run it again.
I believe it just happened.
Okay, well, that's why I didn't see it then. I want to rerun everything and see where I get to some of these guys now with updated ownership, because I thought Mitchell Robinson, particularly in the captain spot, was going a little bit overlooked.
6% right now. or 6% on the previous update. I'm refreshing what's on the screen right now and scrolling down, and that number is now 7%. He is now the third most owned guy behind Brunson and Halliburton, and pretty clearly the easiest guy to get to that isn't one of the two main stars. Like in a showdown slate, like Brunson and Halliburton are always going to be owned like this, barring pre-game injuries that we don't know. Like that's just raw points rule the roost when we do this. That's how good of a play Mitchell Robinson looks right now, that he can get himself all the way up to third and pull that kind of captain ownership as well. This is not just a value proposition. He can hang a big number here. I mean, if the free throws happen to fall better than normal, couple easy putbacks on offensive rebounds, like 10 and 18 with stocks is very much in the cards for him. And that will become a very interesting captain score potentially. Are there any knock-on effects to Indiana that you see from this change?
I do expect the game to be played at a slightly slower pace. I've been considering betting the under while we're doing the show right here and talking through it, because the total hasn't moved from the last couple of games. It's at 224 on DraftKings right now. FanDuel has the total at 223.5, which game 1, I think, was 221. Last game was 223.5. So they haven't made any kind of adjustments to the pace, at least the books, for the Mitchell Robinson starting. But my expectation is that the game is going to be a slightly slower pace, but it's hard to say that impacts anybody on the pace, because it just impacts everybody the same if there's a couple less possessions in the game. I can't really think of anybody else who it would really help. I do think overall Mitchell Robinson in the aggregate is a better defensive player than Josh Hart. So that maybe makes it harder for guys to finish around the rim for the Pacers, but like, what is that actually going to mean for fantasy production? It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, I don't think there's much that's all that actionable in that way. And other than just having a hard time getting away from Mitchell Robinson, which is my guess when I get done running this, I don't think these changes are going to matter much. I'm optimistic that I get Josh Hart. That's kind of the path that I want to take. He strikes me as someone that is like, will do anything for the team, obviously. But he also strikes me as someone that is going to be like extra pissed that he's coming off the bench. I don't like read into that, but like in a showdown, it's just like, I feel like he's going to have like an extra something.
So
I don't think he wants this.
I don't necessarily think he's going to be pissed per se, but I think it'll be easier for him to play his minutes with his normal energy all the time in a way that's kind of hard when he plays 42 minutes. So I do think there's a case to be made that'll have a higher per minute production than what he's had at other points in the playoffs. It's just, can that make up for him playing 10 less minutes? That's where I'm kind of doubtful.
God, he might ultimately not play that light of a load. If we see any foul trouble to either one of those dudes, he's probably the next. Well, I guess that's an interesting question. If Karl Anthony Towns is the guy that gets in more foul trouble, is Josh Hart the next man up?
Yeah. Josh Hart will be the first man off the bench today.
Not necessarily how I mean it, but are they willing to have the two non-shooters out there as much as they would in that scenario? Not necessarily. Like, obviously, Josh Hart's still getting his, but I wonder if that trickles down in a different, like maybe potentially more to Miles McBride. I guess they just don't have anybody else.
Yeah, they have. Well, if we consider Miles McBride a viable rotation piece, he's kind of like half of one, though. They've got 7 guys who could actually feel decent about. They'll throw Campaign out there. He sucked last game. He played terribly. He
sucks all the time.
I mean, he does. He sucks. And also, he's a bad decision maker. It's not even like he's bad and plays within himself. He's bad and tries to do things better players would do. So that leads to missed shots. It leads to turnovers. Like the Knicks really only have 7 viable players on their roster.
Yeah, like I think Campaign's fine in regular season scenarios, and like his advanced data is all fine. But we're also talking about a guy that like essentially doesn't play, so it's hard to read into his stuff in any way. And a 6'3", 185, 30-year-old Campaign is going to get beat like a drum defensively. So that certainly doesn't help.
And when he does play in the playoffs, it's against other end of the bench guys. So it's like a totally different, everything's totally different. He would be playing against better players than he normally plays against. He's also playing at a higher intensity. Like he's used to playing against shitty players in like 30-point games. That's where he's getting the bulk of his minutes, or he's getting like a spot start where he's actually healthy and other guys are kind of banged up over the course of the regular season. The game's much more important to him than it is to the guys he's playing against as well in those kind of scenarios. But yeah, it's going to be Josh Hart off the bench, barring any kind of, weird injury situation or anything. It'll still be him over any of the other options.
Agreed. I just finished my sim. I uploaded my lineups. We've got about 11 minutes to go until we get to lock. Quite a bit over the field on Halliburton captain, a little bit over the field on Brunson captain, under Towns, under Siakam. Very happy there. I got 5% at TJ McConnell at the captain spot on the last run. That one makes me nauseous a bit.
Okay.
Didn't get the Josh Hart stand that I was getting, but I did get a stand on someone I never get a stand on, and this dude is for sure going to suck today. Mikal Bridges, my highest leverage option. Oh, speaking of things that I screwed up, I don't know. Were you watching my live playback Friday night? No, you left. You were with your dad, right?
Yeah, I didn't see it on Friday.
So I don't remember the scenario of the game, but I wanted to bet the Pacers with like 6 minutes left or so. And I wanted to take the alt line, and I wanted to get it at -5.5. And I let it sit there because I didn't like the line at first. And when I looked back, it was showing me like +185 or +190. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to pull the trigger. I think this is going to win. And I clicked the button, and I guess I just wasn't paying attention enough. And it immediately like refreshed itself to like -105 or -110 or something and puts the bet in. And I was like, oh, damn it. Like, this sucks. Immediately, I say, generational wealth spot coming. I promise you. The Indiana Pacers are going to win this game by 5 points. Sure enough, I was like, here it comes. He's going to miss this three. They're going to catch it. They're going to foul him. Missed three, caught, fouled with 0.2 of a second left or whatever, lands on 5 on the nose. I could not have been more frustrated. That's how I feel about Mikal Bridges here today. I have 46% of him at the flex. I wanted him in situations against Boston. I never get him. And now that I have him, I am positive this dude's going to suck today.
So I did just update everything, and I am, you know what? So I'm overweight to both Anunoby and Bridges today. Not like in a crazy way or anything like that. And I am more overweight to Bridges than I am to Anunoby because I have a little bit more than 40% Bridges. But Bridges is live to play an insane amount of minutes today with the Knicks down 2-0, because he's been somebody who already plays a healthy amount. He could be like a 44-minute guy or something today.
Yeah, I mean, he's regularly we saw, I don't remember if it was game 1 or game 2. I guess it was 1 now. He played 23 of the first 24 minutes of the game. He does this shit all the time. I agree with you that he's very live. The only other guy that I have a big stand on is Miles McBride at the flex. I'm fine with that given the lineup changes. Biggest fades are all Indy. Neesmith, Nembhard, Halliburton, and Turner. Again, at the flex. I guess I'm going to say bing bong today, go Knicks, because that's the way that my exposures are starting to look.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard for Mitchell Robinson to not be in close to everything for me. I'm actually kind of surprised I only have 80% of Mitchell Robinson. I have him 68% in the flex, and I have Mitchell Robinson 11% in the captain spot. If I had to pick a number, I'd prefer to be over that than under that mark. He's pretty clearly the top overall option in the game for me. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm maybe a little bit more balanced between the two teams than you are, but I am leaning towards the Knicks in my exposures for sure, primarily because of how much Robinson I have.
We're getting a lot of questions about how this change affects Miles Turner. I personally think that it's an upgrade for Miles Turner. Where do you land?
It's probably neutral for him. Obviously, his ability to space the floor is something that gave Robinson a lot of issues last game. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Tibbs went to the lineup just because of how that fourth quarter went last game. Like, based on the rumors we got yesterday and today, like, this was the assumed starting lineup. But at the same time, too, Robinson really struggled to close out on shooters last game. And there was a lot of open shots the Pacers got down the stretch because Robinson was on the court. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of Miles Turner camped out around the perimeter based on how the fourth quarter went. And I think he should get open looks at threes.
I want to pull this up from game 2. I hope I can move fast enough. I'm just trying to think through the matchups here and think about where Mitchell Robinson ends up in this scenario. So when Mitchell Robinson was on the floor in game 2, primarily on Miles Turner for 3.5 minutes and then scattered through Tony Bradley and the other bigs. Yeah, I mean, if Mitchell Robinson is guarding Turner, so that's going to be Towns on Siakam?
Which Towns has guarded Siakam pretty well when they've had that matchup at times this series. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to say. Like, Siakam gave everybody the business in game 2. Yeah.
So that's clouding me a bit. I mean, it was Anunoby as the primary for Siakam in game 2, which I guess then leads to where are they going to put Karl Anthony Towns?
The Knicks could also just play a lot of zone.
Yeah.
Just have Robinson kind of camped out around the basket.
I'm very intrigued by these defensive matchups now. Kid Catastrophe says, inevitably, this is a Toppin game. I don't feel it. Do you?
I feel like everybody always thinks every game is going to be a Toppin game. Like, he's always not only do I feel like he's pretty frequently more popular than he should be, but I also think he's somebody who people think he's better than he actually is.
Yeah.
He's not a great fantasy producer. He's not a good real life player either. He's just like an average sort of role player. It's funny the Knicks could really benefit from having somebody like that because they have zero depth and he used to be on the team. But he's fairly popular for today. I have less than 20% of him. He's pulling ownership in the low 30% range. The biggest issue I have with him is that he's in the same price point as Mitchell Robinson, and I just view Robinson as being far superior of an option today.
Yeah, I'm not, he's just a guy. I don't think about him in any way, basically ever. Because he's just as live to go out there and get destroyed defensively because he's one of the worst guys in the league that does that. And he's also just as live to get like 3 steal run out dunks. And all of a sudden you're like, ah, shit, I needed to play Obi Toppin.
Yeah.
Those are the frustrating ones because his lack of defensive ability also somehow leads him to like incredibly free buckets from time to time. I guess just to touch, I know people are going to be mad that we didn't touch on it enough. I don't think there's all that much different to say here. The most popular MVPs on the FanDuel side are Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton. Towns is up next. Siakam doesn't have the same price advantage on FanDuel, but he's still the 4th most owned captain. Mitchell Robinson's 3,800 on FanDuel, still incredibly interesting. The value play on the FanDuel side is a little bit less, but even still, pulling close to 50% ownership. I don't see much separation here. I think it's easier to talk about this game as a game than it is like differentiating between salary quirks between the two sites.
Yeah, I don't really think there's a noticeable difference between the two in terms of the players that we like. I know the pricing has been really soft on FanDuel, which makes Mitchell Robinson's price point maybe a little bit less necessary, but at the same point too, he's just as good a fantasy producer as anybody else who's in the starting lineup for the most part. He's a really, really good fantasy producer. So like he could be thousands of dollars more expensive and he'd still be an appealing option on FanDuel and DraftKings. So even if the salary savings aren't necessary on FanDuel, he's such a good fantasy producer that you could make a case that he should probably be projected for, not that much less than some of the role players for the Pacers, like, Nembhard or some of those sorts of guys, Neesmith anyway.
I didn't ask you this yet. Who wins?
I'm going to go towards the Knicks. Maybe a little bit of bias after what we saw last night in the Wolves OKC game, where the Wolves played like their backs were against the wall and OKC just was not able to match that energy or that intensity. Not saying that will happen today, but it's definitely on my mind after it happened yesterday. That it wouldn't be shocking to me if something happens today in the same sort of way where the game just matters so much more to the Knicks and the Pacers that they just beat them to every rebound, every loose ball, and just play harder.
James Perkins says some people are saying Tibbs is getting out coached. I mean, the gap between Tibbs and Rick Carlisle as basketball coaches is a chasm in a playoff series. A lot of that is self-made for Tibbs, but it's not just some people. Everybody is watching that happen.
It has, in general, it's just not been a good it's not been a good 2 games for the Knicks. Obviously, it's been a really good playoffs for the Knicks. Not a good 2 games, though.
And Rick Carlisle is on everybody's short list of one of the best coaches and tacticians in the game. It's a losing battle.
Game 1, though.
Fair. Well, look, I'm still right. I'm not. There's no chance I'm judging this based off of results. One shot doesn't go in, and everybody's saying the exact same thing. So, but we'll forget it because it went in. Yeah, I agree. I'm leaning Knicks today too. I guess just from kind of based off of yesterday a little bit. Just it's so much easier for the Knicks to get up for this one. Although the caveat here is Indy's going home with a 2-0 lead, and maybe that fuels this differently, and their crowd can keep them in, whereas OKC was rolling into a 2-0 lead but going to Minnesota. I think that's an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe also the Pacers watched the game last night and they're like, hey, reminder, these guys are going to really give a shit about winning this game, and we better show up prepared to match that intensity and physicality in the early going. This is also going to be a very physical game. It's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, that game is about to start. Do you know if it's on ESPN or TNT? Because the difference is like 15 minutes in start time.
Let's see. It is on. I just pulled it up on playback, so I'm looking to see if there's a logo anywhere. Not yet on screen. TNT.
We're on TNT? Okay. Well, from what I saw, TNT through the conference finals, 5-minute delay or 6-minute delay for the start time. ESPN and ABC is 10 to 15. So that one's going to start pretty quickly. You guys can watch it on playback, playback.tv/Stokastic. The link is in the description of this video. It is also in chat, which is where I just put it, and I'm putting it there again. The game will be on. I'm going to be honest with you guys, pretty tired. But if this one's competitive down the stretch, I'm going to try to hop on to playback tonight. I'm certainly going to be watching the game. I would not mind at all if this is a complete ass beating and I don't have to think about it. But if it's close, I got to be there because game one was too much fun and I can't miss that again.
We'll see. We'll see. Some people think it was only close because you showed up on playback.
That seems like a pretty reasonable stance to me, which if you guys want a close game, I'll see you guys in like 2 hours. But Greg, anything else before we dip?
No, if you haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and enjoy the game tonight.
There we go, everybody. Like, subscribe, notification bell. Back to the tomorrow. No sleep for Memorial Day for us. We'll be here with bells on, breaking down basketball and baseball and whatever the hell else is going on for Monday. Good luck, everybody. See you guys in playback.